After January 1 of 2020, what typically has resulted in a person being locked up pretrial or established bail for the release will now be released. For over 400 crimes, they'll be automatically arraigned and released. If you break into someone's house or someone breaks into your house and gets arrested for burglary in the second degree, they're going to automatically be released. They will not be able to be held on bail. If someone commits a robbery against another person, they will automatically be arraigned and released. They will not be able to be held pretrial based on just that crime. If in a domestic situation there's an assault that occurs and then the person fights with the police when they're arresting them, that person's going to get released that immediately after appearance ticket or arraignment that same day, and before the victim can create any sort of plan for safety, before anything that can be done to make sure that the victim or the children are safe, that person's going to get arraigned and released. That's a huge difference from what we have now, and in my opinion, it makes the public much more at risk. It's not a move that makes us safer by any means. Another issue, not a larger issue because I think that is the primary issue, but another issue we face is the treatment that our inmates get in our upstate jails is significantly different than what they get downstate, in that almost every upstate jail has an addiction recovery treatment program. Most of us have medical treatment that far exceeds what that inmate would get out on the street. For example, about 80% of our inmates that we currently have suffer some sort of addiction, and a lot of that drives the crimes that they commit. Currently, someone gets arrested for the B felony of criminal sales of a narcotic. They're going to come in here, they're going to get clean while they're waiting for pretrial. They're going to get daily addiction counseling, and there's going to be a plan when they leave to try to get them into continued services so that they can continue to recover from that addiction. Under the current bail reform, we are unable to hold them for any reason, for any violation of any section of Article 220 of the Penal Law, which is the drug section. We can't hold them. They have to be released, other than the A1 felony. And so most of the folks that we arrest for selling, possessing, with that big sweep we just did where it was over 30-some, that all of them would have been released under this new guideline. So those folks don't get that opportunity to get the break from their addiction. All they do is come in, get processed, and go right back into the life they were in, which includes use and sales. Mm-hmm. And instead of giving them the opportunity to recover, giving them the opportunity, this is a potentially fatal consequence, that they will be back out on the street, right back into the life they were in immediately, with no chance at recovery. So on one end, we see the public is less safe. On the other end, we see the inmates are less safe. So I'm trying to find in any way, shape, or form where the lengths that these changes have gone to benefits any member of the state of New York. I know the public defenders group has issued a statement about why it's great, but again, it's a philosophical viewpoint of why this had to happen, rather than talking to practitioners, talking to people who actually do this job every day, and seeing the real world results that this will occur, or that will occur due to these changes. I don't think there's anybody that disputes the fact that there needed to be some changes as it relates to cash bail for indigent folks. That's a long way from where we've gone. And what we did was we stepped right over that and then charged and dove off the cliff with these reforms by eliminating cash bail altogether. I don't see any way that this doesn't result in injury to someone or even death due to the fact that a person is released that shouldn't have been released. And the effect on public safety that will have on our public safety mission here in Steuben County terrifies me. Well, I know at this time last year, our daily population at the jail was around 205 inmates. Yesterday, I believe we were at 120, around 120, 125, after we just did a roundup of probation violators. So obviously, you're talking 80 to 100 people that would have been in here pre-trial that are no longer here. The Steuben County Magistrates, we have a working group with the Office of Court Administration and the Steuben County Magistrates and our Steuben County judges, where we looked at the changes and tried to make a seamless attempt at compliance with this, so that at the end of December 31st, we weren't releasing 80 people all at once. So the magistrates have been using the new guidelines in their arraignments. The county court judges have made a plan that anyone who is currently locked up that doesn't meet the guidelines will be released by mid-December, and so that we can take time to at least phase this in, and the folks that are here that will be released, we can get them with the services that they need in order to maintain their health.
And right now
So every one of these bunks would typically be full a year ago, and it wasn't unusual for us to have to double bunk once or twice a year because we'd run out of beds. So we have a maximum of 265, and it's been full before. Right now, again, we're at around 120 today, 123 I think it was this morning, and those folks that we have are all people that are here because they don't meet the criteria to be released, and that makes a difference to the safety of our correction officers also, because now the entire population are either deemed to be incredibly dangerous or deemed to be such persons who have committed so many crimes over and over and over again that they don't meet the criteria to be released. So the increased danger of that population altogether all the time affects also the work that our correction officers have to do here. When you have nothing but the most dangerous folks in one group, that group can create an identity of its own, where if that group is broken up amongst other housing units or dispersed with other folks in there, it's typically a more manageable group. This was pushed through the legislature last year as part of the budget, and obviously that means that it had the governor's full support. And again, this is legislation that was not fleshed out with practitioners. I know that the New York State Sheriff's Association opposed it, sent letters opposing it. The New York State Chiefs of Police sent letters opposing it. The New York State District Attorneys Association sent letters opposing it. No one that is a practitioner in the field feels it's a great idea. It was driven by special interest groups in the New York State Assembly and Senate that allowed it to go through in a budget setting with no public hearings, no input from stakeholders, and no input from practitioners. That's one of our greatest issues with it, is let's not be in a rush. Let's set back. Let's look at what actually makes sense in a real world, and let's implement those changes that we need. Let's not implement a ton of changes just to be the first ones to do it. Well, just to give you one example, Steuben County is 1,400 square miles with 95,000 people. To contrast that to even Erie County, which is where Buffalo is, it's only 1,200 square miles, smaller, with 925,000 people. So 10 times the population, but a tenth less geographical size. So what we face, our challenges are much, much different. We're a much more rural area. If you look at most county jails, they're our size or smaller, and the majority of them are, with unique needs to their communities that they meet every day. When you look at Rikers Island, and at one time they had, what, 20,000?
They have actually more than 20.
More than 20,000 inmates in one facility to meet the needs of New York City. What they have, the problems they experience, and all of the various issues associated with that population are much, much different than what we face here. We actually, in almost all the upstate jails, we're invested in reducing recidivism. We're invested in programs that help the inmate leave in a better place than when they came here. We're invested in various treatment programs for addiction recovery that they cannot offer in a large-scale jail such as Rikers Island just because of the sheer number of people that are there and the turnover. And I think that when you look across the state at what we do in our upstate jails, we're mostly all models of how it should be done. And by changing the rules as drastically as they have, it limits our ability to help folks. It limits our ability to help keep the public safe. And again, it's hugely detrimental to the public safety mission.
You know,
I think they meant well. I really do. I think in their mind they meant well. I think they were ill-informed, and I think that they felt like they were helping. There was a story that was repeated by a member of the Attorney General's office in a conference I was at of a person in Rikers Island that was arrested for petty larceny, a misdemeanor, and he was in Rikers Island for over 2 years, awaiting adjudication. That's a problem. We don't have those problems up here. People don't get lost in the shuffle up here like that. So yes, there were problems down there, problems that needed to be addressed. But instead of identifying the problem and correcting it in that facility, what the state has done is taken a broad brush and said, all facilities must be the same. And in order to change one, we have to change all of them. Well, that's simply not the case. Look at your school districts, for example. The New York City Public School District is much different than the Corning Painted Post Public School District. And to try and address issues across the board between those two would be a disaster. And that's what we're doing. Well, I know that it's been heard at the legislative level, and whether or not it has been heard enough, I think all of the voices collectively need to continue to be heard in order for change to occur. I think it will have to change. I think it's untenable the way it is written. Someone's going to get hurt. There'll be an injury for someone that was released that shouldn't have been released. And then you'll see enough people from a groundswell coming up to say, this is ridiculous, let's change this. Then you'll see something change. Unfortunately, I fear what will have to happen in order for that grassroots to occur.